Our guest today is not only one of the premier commentators in our sport, but he's also one of the very best coaches. He founded his tennis academy in France in 1996, and he's worked alongside Serena Williams, helping her to 10 additional Grand Slam titles. He's also coached Marcos Baghdatis, Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, Grigor Dimitrov, Jeremy Chardy, and many more. And he's also had under his academy Stefanos Tsitsipas and Coco Gauff. Pleased to welcome on Matchpoint Canada, Patrick Mouratoglou. Thanks so much for being with us, Patrick.
Thank you for the invitation.
Patrick, with so little downtime in a normal tennis season, it would be totally understandable for people to want to take a break right now. And yet here you are starting your own ambitious tennis tour. Can you take us through the creation of the Ultimate Tennis Showdown? Where did you get the idea? And how are you pleased with how things are going up to this point?
Well, tennis is my passion, my life, and my industry. So of course, I care a lot about tennis. And I realized a few years ago that tennis was not in a great space. It looks great, everything looks great, but if you dig a little bit, you realize that there are reasons to worry for the future of tennis, not for the present, but for the future. The average age of the fan is 61 years old. It was 51 years old 10 years ago, and so it's going to be probably 71 in 10 years. And for a reason that is quite obvious, the tennis fans are very loyal to tennis because this sport is incredible and it's very addictive. But it's extremely difficult to recruit new fans and young fans for tennis for several reasons. But I would say that the main reason is that the format of tennis is very old. I'm sorry to say it, but old-fashioned, even though I love it the way it is, and all the tennis fans love it the way it is. But it's very old, very slow, very complicated. We're used to it, so we don't find it complicated, but it is complicated. Very slow. I also had my team work on how much time during a match the ball is in play compared to the time when the ball is not in play, and it's a bit scary. When you watch a tennis match, the ball is in play between 5 and 20% of the time. So that means that between 95 and 80% of the time, you watch people doing their routines. And again, I'm okay with that, but a young non-tennis fan would never sit down for 3 hours to look at guys doing their routines. This is not going to happen, and that's why we're not recruiting new fans. Also, we have to realize that the prime of tennis was in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. At that time, there was no competition. There was very few sports. There was no social medias, no Netflix. Not all those sports, no video games, no esports, so that was easy. But now everything is there. The way people consume videos has completely changed. We all know that the attention span is extremely short. So the format of tennis doesn't give any of those. So again, to keep the core fans is not a problem. So that's why I don't think we should change tennis. But I think that if we want to recruit new fans, and we need to, we have to propose a different format. And that's the whole idea about UTS. And I know, of course, some traditional tennis fans are completely against it because they feel, oh, this guy wants to change our sport. I don't want to change our sport. I love tennis the way it is. But I think that if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to die. So we need to also think out of the box and propose a different product. So, and I think those two leagues can completely work together next to each other. One with the goal to satisfy the core fans, and the other one with a goal to recruit new ones.
It's very forward thinking, and I like the way you explain it. And it's true for those of us who are in the sport and grew up with the sport, it's totally normal that tennis is this way. But as someone who teaches high school students and coaches high school students, and Ben coaches as well, it's a totally different generation that's coming along now. So absolutely credit to you for coming up with some new ways to, like you said, not replace what tennis is, but to kind of go along with it. For those who aren't familiar with some of the fun changes, the new and exciting rules that you have in UTS, Can you explain maybe 2 or 3 of the biggest differences and ways that you think that's speeding up and attracting new fans to the game?
So the first rule that is really different is the fact that the match lasts only 1 hour, whatever happens. uh, I mean, in tennis, you never know when you start because it depends on the previous matches. You have no idea about how long they're going to be, and you never know when you finish because the score decides how long the match is. In UTS, the clock decides when the match is over, like in basketball or in football or all those sports. Now, that's a major difference. That means also that the players, they have to manage the time. In tennis, time doesn't matter, but in UTS, time matters a lot. And what you do at this moment of the match has an importance. So that's a big difference. I changed the scoring, which I think is a big problem for the non-fans, because when you win 1 point and you have 15, and then you 40-15 and you win 1 point and then you have 1, it's extremely complicated. And we don't have time today to explain complicated things. If you want to get new fans, it has to be simple. So the scoring is different. It's quarters. It's a tie-break format, but it's a quarter. It's 4 times 10-minute quarters, and the one who has the most points at the end of the quarter wins. So that's 2 big differences, I guess. And the third one is the use of the cards. So, and that's interesting for several reasons. And one of the reasons is that we don't want something that is flat. We want suspense, because I think people watch sport to feel emotions, and we have to give them emotions. And to give them emotions, it has to be, you have to have some kind of suspense. And with the cards, you can be down and suddenly 30 seconds later be up, because with the cards, you can get extra points, and you surprise also by using a card. So you wake up the people who are watching, you wake them up. In classical tennis, you can spend 20 minutes with nothing happening, and people switch to another channel, or they go do something else, and maybe they come back at the end of the set if you're lucky, because this is the prime time. So all these things have the goal to maintain the people under pressure the whole match, and that's what the players are saying. There is no downtime. It's a prime time from the first to the last point. Of course, there are highest prime times, but you can't afford to lose concentration for a minute, because you can be done. So that's the goal, to have to have a match that is short in time but very intense. Also, we have 15 seconds between the points rather than 25, and that's a huge difference, because you play many more points during this hour than in regular tennis. So you almost play 2 sets, the equivalent of 2 sets, in an hour of time. And it's very dynamic, a lot of suspense, a lot of things happening on the court. That's what we wanted.
I have to say, I'm really fascinated by the change in the scoring system. And as someone who coaches tennis myself, I can only tell you the number of times I have kids asking me, trying to understand how does scoring work in tennis? Why, when I have 3 points, I have 40? Why is 40-40 called deuce? Just all these little things that I think for people who haven't watched the sport, it's so sort of convoluted and hard to understand. It's easy for us because we've been around the game, but you're right. It's something that I think needs to change to attract the new viewer and attract a new audience. I'm curious because I think anytime we do see change to sports that we love, there's always hesitancy. People don't like change initially. And I got the sense from social media and Twitter, when you first launched the Ultimate Tennis Showdown, and people were reading the scoring, they were very hesitant to accept this idea. But now that we've actually physically seen the matches, we've seen the players play, what's been the response so far? I guess firstly from the players who get to compete in this new format, and from media and fans alike.
Yeah, you're totally right. People hate change in general, and even more in the sports that are very conservative, like tennis or golf or those sports. If you want to change anything, it's like you take something big away from people. But that's why I'm saying I don't want to change. I just want to propose something else. It's
Right.
an addition. It's an addition. So the response is great. First, the players' response is really amazing. They love it. They realize that it's extremely intense because if you think about it, they never take the 15 seconds because they serve every time 5 seconds, let's say, average before the end. So they basically have 10 seconds to recover between points, which is extremely short. So it's a big cardio session, which is very interesting also because they have to take major decisions all the time. Remember the cards, see the cards of the opponent, look at the time. They have to manage a lot of things they're not used to managing, with being like probably with their cardio really high, and we all know that it's very difficult to take good decisions when the cardio is high. So that's a good effort for them. They really like it. I think it just highlights different qualities than classical tennis, which has become a very physical sport. And if you look at the top 3 players in the world, that are the most physical ones, Rafa, Novak, and Dominic Thiem. They're clearly the 3 best physical players, which is good. But I think tennis, one of the things that is great with tennis is that you need so many different qualities to be a top player. You need to be strategic. You have the technical side is very important. The physical is one thing, but it's not everything. So I think in UTS it highlights also different qualities. Of course, if you serve well, it's a big advantage, I think, especially with a card that you get 3 points if you hit a winner. If you hit an ace, you can come back fast score-wise. But it's very strategic also. It's very, very strategic. You can put pressure, and as people are under stress, and I mean, sometimes it's difficult for them to recover because of the time they have between the points. If you put them under pressure, they can take bad decisions. So it's really very mental and very tactical, even more, I think, than classical tennis, which is something I like. But the players have loved it. They've said it actually publicly, all of them. Of course, you know how it is. The more they win, the more they like it. The more they lose, the least they like it. But they like it, and I know it also because a lot of players have reached out to me to participate. We have actually a long list of players who would like to be in UTS 2, which will be right after the end of UTS 1. And it says a lot about how much the players like it, and I think this is the most important. Even though I'm completely centered on the fans, because I want to create the best product for the new fans to become fans. If the players don't enjoy, they're not going to make a good show and nobody's going to like it. So that was the first hurdle, was to make sure that the players would love it. And this one has worked really, really well. And actually most of them asked if they could play the second event, which will take place for 4 more weekends right after the first one. So that's great. Now, Twitter, of course. What I don't like is, I mean, people are of course free to have their own opinion. I never like so much people who judge before seeing.
For sure.
I think this is a big mistake, and nobody should do that. And I regret that the Davis Cup the new format has been killed before it even took place, which I think is not acceptable. You should respect people who are trying to do things, and the best way to respect is to say, okay, maybe it doesn't look good, but I'm going to look, and after I'm going to give my opinion. But that's how the world is, so I'm not going to change it. But I think it's very positive.
Well, that's good on you as well for the courageousness to try something new, especially I think in a sport like tennis, which is so sort of rooted and obsessed with its traditions, but just giving some new type of variety. And one aspect that I love about it, from having watched just a bit, is in the short and condensed format, every single point matters. We have different ebbs and flows when you watch a full tennis match and you see like a 4-1 40 love score is not a point that matters. But in this sort of condensed format, everything is so crucial. I'm also curious, were you nervous, I guess, when you started hosting this event, just in the sense of a global pandemic happening, just being able to manage around that? Was that a concern?
To be honest, not really, because first of all, we are in a part of the world where, the situation is quite good compared to a lot of other places. We had reached the peak quite long time before, and we were really, really going down. And and we were extremely respectful of all the rules. I reached out to the government to have an official authorization, and I asked to have also all the rules that we needed to follow, and everybody's been extremely serious about it. We've been testing all the players and all the teams before every weekend. A lot of stupid things that are said again on social media because people talk without being informed. So it ends up being completely stupid. Like the thing with Dominic Thiem was completely ridiculous. Yes, he's been in contact with those guys, but you know, I'm talking about the Adria Tour. He was in
Yes.
contact with the people who were infected. He could have been infected, but when he played the first weekend, we knew nothing about it. So he's been tested and he was negative, and we didn't know anything. And then the scandal happened after. But when the scandal happened, he was back home, and then he got tested every day. And when he came back to the UTS, 15 days had passed and 9 tests. So what's the problem with that? You know, so as I was just saying, we've been extremely respectful of all the rules, and I think it was quite obvious. No crowd, distance between every spectator. Who were not spectators, actually they were the teams of the players. Everybody tested. No hugs, no handshaking, you know. So I think, of course, the ball boys were wearing gloves, they were wearing masks. Both players had different tennis balls, so they were not sharing them. I think, and many other things that I'm not gonna. The list is too long, but I don't think we took any risk. You know, if you look at how people live every day around us, I think there are a million more risks around us than what we've done. So I was not nervous for that. We became nervous when everybody went crazy after what happened at the Adria Tour, because then you read things that don't really make sense and you think, well, people are getting a bit crazy. I mean, I understand that people were angry with what happened, because when you are in sport and you're a star and you have to show a good example, and this I completely understand, and I think we've done it. But look at how people live. You know, you're in the US. Oh, you're not in the US. You're in Canada. I don't know how it is in Canada, but in Europe, people are living almost normal now. People go to the restaurants. The restaurants are full. You know, we live a normal life. So, but we would wanted to make sure that this tournament would be really, really respecting 10 times more than what we were supposed to respect. So everybody would feel secure. And actually, the players told me, when we come to the academy to play the matches on the weekends, we feel super secure. So.
Just one more question, Patrick, about UTS before we do ask you a couple others about some of the exciting players that our listeners are interested in that you work closely with. But Felix Auger-Aliassime was originally scheduled, and as a Canadian tennis podcast, we were excited to hear that. Unfortunately, injury precautions took him out ahead of time. You said there's going to be future installments of UTS. Are there any other Canadians, given that it's an exciting time for the sport here in our country, any Canadians that you've spoken with or would like to see involved in future editions?
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of, I mean, you're lucky to have a lot of great future top players in Canada. So definitely yes, but for the moment, the travel restrictions are really a big hurdle. So Felix could play because he's living, as you might know, next to us. So physically, he was around. The other Canadians are in Canada or in the US, and for the moment, it's not possible for them to come down to Europe and south of France. But I would love to have others. I love all the Canadian players. They're all great, including Bianca, who's an amazing player too. And I hope to have soon also a women events at UTS. We just didn't have time to do both. And as it was actually, you asked me before, Ben, if I was nervous with COVID-19. I explained to you why I was not, but I was very nervous about the product that we would deliver, because this was, first of all, the first time in our lives that we were doing like a production a high-level production. I'm talking about a TV production. And I mean, doing an event like this is huge, and that's not our main job. Our main job is to train players. So we were very nervous with that. And I thought if we try to do men and women, we double the chances to fail. So it's such a huge organization and risk taking. I want to focus on men first, but I definitely want to add women in the future. And I hope to have, of course, the Canadians, which are, again, great players. And I'm sure some of them will be in the top rankings in the future.
Oh, we love hearing that. And as UTS is happening and obviously taking up a lot of your time, how much time do you have to start thinking about what's coming next with the return of the ATP, WTA, and the Grand Slams? And all of our listeners are very curious, how is Serena Williams doing these days, and how are her preparations coming along?
I still have time to think about, of course, Serena's practice and making sure that she'll be ready for the next challenges, which I hope will be the US Open and Roland Garros. Actually, I was quite positive about it, but when I see how things are going, I start to doubt about this possibility to host those events, because the situation in the US is just getting worse and worse. I think from what I heard that when you come from Europe, you have to be 14 days in quarantine, which is okay for me, but for the players, how can they participate in an event if they have to stay in a hotel room for 14 days before a Grand Slam? Sounds difficult. And the situation gets, again, worse and worse in terms of number of cases of COVID-19 in the US. And I think New York is quite bad. I don't know if the governor will end up authorizing this event. I would be surprised if he does. And even though he does, I think that Europe will say, if you come back from the US, you have to be in quarantine. So what's going to happen? We're supposed to play Madrid and Rome right after the US Open. If you're in quarantine, how do you play? And then you have to play Roland Garros, being in a room for 14 days. I mean, all this sounds a bit impossible. I think it was quite ambitious from the ATP and WTA to do this schedule that is so packed, where there is this quarantine problem. Because when the schedule is packed, if there is quarantine that takes place in the middle of that, it screws the whole thing. So I hope it's gonna happen, but I think the more time passes, the more it looks difficult. And I think players might have to choose between the US Open and Roland Garros, especially the European ones. Maybe the Americans know, even though I think it's the same problem, but we'll see. I mean, Serena's getting ready. She's extremely motivated. She came back to tennis only to beat that record. That was her main goal, because she was 37 years old. She just became a mother, has an incredible career, but something was missing to beat the record of all times. And she thought, because she's everything but a quitter, I'm not ready to give up tennis until I reach that goal. So she decided to do an incredible effort to come back to a good level, both physically, mentally, because I think becoming a mother changes a lot of things in a woman, and you need to adapt to a completely new situation when you become mother and you have the responsibility of your child. I mean, honestly, I've never seen her work that hard to come back in shape. So she's not going to give up now. She really feels she has it in her racket. So whatever time it takes, she's ready. She's getting ready, and she wants to win a few more Grand Slams.
Well, and we should note she's been so close, really making four of the last 8 Grand Slam finals, and you feel like she's always just been one match away. You talk about overcoming some of those physical hurdles in terms of coming back from motherhood, having a child, and then getting back in peak physical condition to compete at the highest level in tennis. Do you think maybe winning that last match, that final, is that more of the mental hurdle right now, because she is that close, and that record is so close but so far at the same time?
Yeah, I think it is mental. You can't. I mean, it's difficult to say that it's not mental when you reach 4 Grand Slam finals and you lose all 4.
Right.
I think she's played great tennis, especially maybe the last 2, 3 reaching the final with great level of tennis. And if I am honest, and I am honest, when you look at the level in final, we're quite far from the level she was able to play in the previous matches. So, but you have to understand, I think it's important for the people to understand, I'm sure you do, but that playing one match for the history is probably the biggest mental challenge that anyone can have to deal with in his life. When you play for history, one match for history, it's just crazy if you think about it. And yeah, so she's used to dealing with a lot of pressure, because when you're number one in the world, in a way you're not allowed to lose, because all the eyes are on you, and whenever you lose a match, everybody starts to say, what's the problem? So, and that's kind of the story of her life. So she's used to deal with a lot of pressure, but this one is going to the next level. So she just we just need to find a solution for that. For the moment it doesn't work, but we haven't tried everything, and there is a solution. We just have to find it, because I think now she's back. I mean, it was more difficult for the first ones that she's lost, the first finals, because I think that she was not at her best yet. So when there is a lot of pressure, much more than usual, and you don't feel completely confident with your tennis or your physical, it's more difficult to deal with that pressure. But now she starts to be really close to her physical level that she used to have. So it becomes more mental now.
Before we wrap up with you, Patrick, there are a couple other players that you've worked closely with that are super exciting. Plenty of personality, as it seems like all of your players usually have, and that's Stefanos Tsitsipas, who, when I looked this morning, is leading the UTS right now leaderboard in terms of points, and that's great, obviously, to have him in that spot. And Coco Gauff, who's just impressed us so much with her off-court words lately in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and just how she's responded to what's going on in the United States. I can't believe how young she is, and she's able to speak like that with that maturity. What can you tell us about those two young players, and how exciting it must be for you to work and develop with them?
When I look at a young player, that's one of the things I really look at, is the personality, because I think there are a lot of great players, but the champions are different. They have a different mindset, and it's all about the personalities. And contrary to what they try to show, that they're nice people, polite people, they are nice and polite, but they're incredible. And I'm just saying that they're not showing the other side, that they are incredible competitors. They want to be the best. They want to beat everyone. They're ferocious, really, the top guys, and the top women, of course, also, which is great, because that's what we expect from a champion. So I look at the personality, because, and I always tell this story about Novak, because he came to tennis at a time when there were two guys that were winning absolutely everything. I'm talking about Rafa and Roger. And at that time, all the players, all the top tens were saying it's impossible to win a Grand Slam. And then this guy comes and says, I'm going to beat them. So I remember the press saying, who's that guy? Who does he think he is? He's so disrespectful. No, it's not disrespectful. He believes in himself so much. And he ended up doing it, like beating both of them, becoming number one in the world. It's all about the mindset. It's all about, so they're different. And I would say, I have to say that both Coco and Stefanos, I think, are very different. Coco, the way, as you just said, the way she has behaved also out of the court is so impressive, that I think everybody realizes how much she's different, how much she's mature for 16 years old, confident, not scared to be herself, which is, I think, a great sign also. And I remember seeing her at 10 years old coming to my academy to pass the tests and be part of the program. And I remember having a one-on-one discussion in my office, and I always push them, like, what do you want? Why do you think you can do it? She was so driven already, and she was believing so much in herself. I remember saying to my team, this one is special. She's different. And now it's well, I mean, now that everybody sees her and knows her, I mean, I think it's obvious that she's really different. And I have to say the same thing with Stefanos, who clearly has his way of thinking, also out of the court, which is something I really love, because again, he dares being different and he dares being himself. And I think that's why human beings are interesting, because everybody's different. If they accept to showcase their real self, which a lot of players don't do in tennis, and I think it's a shame, because it's not interesting to see clones, and they're not clones, but they want to show only the part that they think people want to see. And I love this quote that says, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." And I think those two players, Coco and Steph, they empower this quote extremely well. And I think both of them have the mentality of the champion. They are incredibly driven and incredibly ambitious, and they believe in themselves. And when you have those three assets, you can go a long way.
Absolutely. Boy, we should show them this video of you speaking about them, because who wouldn't want to see their coach talk so proudly of them? Patrick, thank you very much. Un grand merci pour nous joindre aujourd'hui. We're Canadian podcast, a little bit of anglais français. We're very impressed with your ambition and your drive to help bring tennis to greater audiences, and we're looking forward to watching the rest of UTS and for you to continue your quest with Serena later this summer, and the development of your other tennis talents that you work so closely with. So thank you so much, and à bientôt.
Thank you very much, et à très bientôt.